All right, now we're going to go over just some reviewing of selection tools, but I'm going to show you a more efficient way to deal with layer masks when using selected mask. So let's say I'm going to use this rocket and I'm going to put it in the sky here. First off, get rid of what you don't need. You know, immediately I know that I only need the rocket, so I'm going to crop this picture so that it's just the rocket and not all the extra stuff, just to make it easier to deal with. And then, as always, you could go ahead and deal with this here, but I'm going to suggest that we drag it on over because I'm going to show you it'll make more sense later. Why? I'm going to drag it on over and position it. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And so at this point, now I've got my rocket here. Now, there are some problems that we've had in the past, but before I get into that, I'm going to go ahead and name this rocket, and I'm going to start selecting this. Now, as a review, we have gone over a couple of different selection tools. Of course, first off, we've had our basic lasso, which if I put it on add to selection here, then I can put part of this in here, which I'm not very good at drawing here, right? And then I can add in some more. Oh, I'm so bad freehand. Okay, and the more I add, the more it puts into the selection. So I can use the lasso and just keep on adding. But the lasso is freehand, and unless you have just a really great steady hand, like me, if you're like me, then yours, it's going to take forever. So, but that's the plain lasso. The other lasso that we talked about was the polygonal lasso. That is the dot to dot lasso, the click, let go lasso. And so again, I got this on add to selection, so that selection that's up there doesn't go away. This is better for straight areas. So like down here, I'm going to click, let go, and then say I'm coming down and trying to get a hold of this part. I'm just going to go all the way across. Okay, so let's say that that's all I need of that, and I'm just going to close it off. Back to the beginning. Okay, so now I've got that part and I've got the other part. And if there are other straight parts, I could go ahead and get those straight parts right now. Oops, and remember backspace if you need backspace to get rid of a point to try it again. So I'm just going over this and adding in, again, some straight parts. And you can decide however far you want to go, to get this going. I could try to go into here. This isn't the greatest place to use this because this is not really straight. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to whip a little out down here. So we'll just pretend this is supposed to go all the way across. And I'll go through these like so. All right. And then when you get back to where you started, you'll find a little dot. And if you have trouble finding that, just get near it and then double click your mouse and that closes off that selection. Now we've got a little bit. If I'm going to press Control-1 here and then scoot up, we can see that I've kind of got both little sections. There's there and there's there. So we've got a little bit of this done, but we still don't have the whole thing selected. Then we have the magnetic lasso. Again, I'm on add to selection, so the second button. And then whatever I add in here is going to continue to add in. So the magnetic lasso, you go around the edges and it just sort of reads your mind and tries to hook on. So I'm going to start up here. And then you're just dragging the mouse. You're not even clicking unless you need to. So like there, it started to jump funny. So I'm going to click. And you can force points anytime by clicking. Otherwise, it will just add points. Now, I always click in the corners and crevices, any little nooks and crannies, just because that's, a good way to make sure you put an anchor point in there. When you run out of room, remember, it's critical that you press the space bar to bring up the hand tool. Then you pick up and scoot it up, put the hand right back where you left off, and then let go. And then you can continue going. And again, if it messes up backspace, if it starts to go the wrong way, force a point to try to get it to obey you. And then usually it'll sort of follow along. Okay. So again, back here, I'm going to click once. I'm going to hold down spacebar. It switches to the hand. I'm lifting up. I still have spacebar push. I'm going to put the hand right back over the dot and then let go of the spacebar and then continue on. Now, again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to select all of this. But now I'm into this selection, so I'm just going to kind of go all the way around over here and double click. And that added that in there. So I'm going to click minus. And so we've got some of it in there. Of course, now I've got this part to do, so I'm going to zoom back up, take my space bar. I'm not started a selection yet, but so now I'll start down here somewhere in this current selection. And then just start going again. And just go up and up and up and up and so forth. Space bar when needed. We're just going to pretend that part that's in the shadow we don't need. And to be honest, sometimes you don't need everything. So don't always feel like just because it's there, you actually have to select every single part of it. Sometimes things look fine even though you leave off parts. Okay, again, clicking at the points, any little cracks and crevices, click on those little cracks and crevices to um, make it put points in those places. Okay, so click, click, click. Just really not wanting to follow this edge. Click, 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 and click. Okay, now I'm back in here, so I'm just going to make a loop and double click. Okay, now this is not perfect by any means, but that's okay. We're going to pretend like it is. Now I'm going to click on select the mask. So notice I did a bunch of this first before I ever went into select the mask. I think that's a good idea. Now I can see in here any areas that I missed. Over here specifically, I've got my opacity turned down so I can see through. But if I turn the red up, you can definitely see where I'm missing the spots at. So I like the red for that reason. So I'm just going to take the brush tool. So this is the one that's like a brush on plus. And I'm just going to kind of paint over this area here where I missed it. And can't tell if some of these areas that are red or if I missed them, but I think they're good. All right, and if there were other areas to, zoom up, fix those with your lassos. You have the lasso and the polygonal lasso and the brush right here, nice and handy. Now, lately in class, I've asked you to output it to a new layer with a layer mask. I'm going to do that, but then I'm going to undo it to show you how I feel about it. So if I click new layer with a layer mask and hit OK, then it does that, and it still have the old one behind it. But if I press Control T to size down this, and then I hold Shift and pull from the corner, and then I hit Enter, my layer mask shrinks. And that's not really good. We want the whole thing to shrink, but now I could end up with those lines around the outside edges. We've had problems with that in the past. All right, so the better way then is, instead of doing it this way, so I'm just going to undo here and get back to this one. Instead of putting it out to a new layer with a layer mask, I'm just going to put it out to a layer mask itself. Now I hit undo here and I've messed up my beautiful work here. So instead of putting on a new layer, we're going to keep it on its current layer. And instead of new layer with a layer mask, we're just going to put a layer mask on the layer that we already have. So when I click layer mask and OK, all right, so here we go. We've got it all situated. And if we press Control T now and we resize, look at that layer mask. It's all good. It keeps it all in good shape. So now I got to warn you, don't scale your little rocket down too quickly or anything, because once you make it little, you can't make it big again without it getting blurry. So I'm at 100%. So at 100%, this picture is pretty clear. If I were to Control T this and scale this down, let's say that I had decided I was going to make it really little in the sky, and put it up here. Once I click this check mark, unless I undo right now, if I decide then to move it and then scale it back up, it's not going to be clear like it was the first time. Look at that. Look how blurry that is. And when you sit it down, it gets a little better, but now it's actually blurry. So it went from pixely to blurry. So you got to be careful. You got to kind of Control Alt Z and get it back to when it's good quality. So when you first bring it in, don't scale it down any smaller than you might need to use it. And that is just super, super critical. All right. And there is an alternative way, by the way, to do this exact same thing. If I have my rocket, let's see if I can back up far enough again. So right here, if I have my rocket selected and say I've just gone into select mask, I'll pop in there again. I've gone into select mask and it's good and I fixed it and it's all that. And instead of it putting on a mask screen, I just say selection. I just leave it marching ants. While the marching ants are active, you can come down here to this little button, the layer mask button, and that does the exact same thing. You just push it and the layer mask is on there. And then again, you can Control T if you need to later on and scale it down and it's all good. It's going to scale down with the mask as well. So you should find that to be pretty handy for when you're working with Photoshop. Just again, remember not to scale down too far. All right. Well, hopefully that makes sense to you. And this gives you a little bit of a review of the selection tools and how to use a layer mask instead of new layer with layer mask to make something that's a little bit easier to scale down.